name is Sarjay Haynes, and I'm here at the New Zone Gallery with my June exhibit called Excavating a New Future. I've been a working artist for about 6 years now, but it's been my lifelong ambition to create, and so it's a great joy to get to share with you this latest series that I've been working on since October of 2023. So why is the show called Excavating a New Future? It's kind of an oxymoronic kind of idea, but it comes from my personal experience with my long-term healing journey from intergenerational traumas and lived traumas. And the work takes on its own life as we keep going through these collective struggles together. So this series is all about trying to draw from our ancestral wisdom, the things that we collectively share, and the things that we don't collectively share, but maybe we do in our long lineage back. So these pieces of wisdom are the things that I think draw us closer together and bring us closer to this wonderful spaceship that we're sharing together called Planet Earth, which is going through tremendous upheaval lately, and we ourselves as a species share a lot of burden of responsibility for that. So this series is really all about how we work together and how we can find a more sustainable future for ourselves and all of the life that's on this planet together. This piece is called Shared Struggle, and it was the origination point for this series. So I started this piece in October, and it took many months to complete. As you see, it rotates, and the reason for that is because it really doesn't have a top or bottom. It's embedded with dozens of different messages which are intended to communicate the ways that we can work together better, as well as the ways that we are still kind of struggling as species and as individuals within our respective different kind of subgroups that we organized ourselves into. So the piece is meant to be difficult to read and difficult to interpret, but I've left lots of little clues around, so if you spend a little bit of time, you'll find them. And I hope that you enjoy looking at this piece. This piece is called Intifada, the Arabic word for to shake off or an upheaval. And so it is visually meant to represent this moment of concentration that we're experiencing, of darkness, that leads to this shaking off and explosion back into a full spectrum experience. So there's really a story here going from Intifada into shared struggle, and then into the idea of integration. And here we have integration, where we see the last bits of the darkness kind of fading out and moving into this beautiful spectrum of experience. Both of these pieces, and really most of the work except for Shared Struggle, were produced using just my version of CMY, so 3-color, all kind of neon shades to represent sort of the era of my birth of the 80s. And so I just love the way that transparent colors sort of integrate together into this spectrum. I Know How to Heal was a piece that was initiated after a car accident I experienced in February. And my personal need to tell myself repeatedly that I could get through that difficult experience and kind of get stitched back together. I was literally stitched back together. And so throughout this piece, of course, there's this very graphic, sort of graffiti-esque version of the message, but inside of each of those shapes, it's written many times, I know how to heal, and so I found it just a very useful practice, sort of like a mantra to keep spending time sitting and writing that out. It helped a lot. The concluding piece in this series is called We Heal Together, and very much like I Know How to Heal, it was about repeating this mantra, this idea that we heal together, because truly I would not have gotten through my experience with my car accident without the help of my community, folks here at the New Zone and in the broader area who looked out for me, showed up and made sure that I had enough food and medical supplies and all of that. So this is really in honor of the community here, and I spent a lot of time, filling in everything by hand, but again, this idea of kind of a graphic way of representing this idea. If you spend a little time, you might be able to read it inside of this glyph, but you'll definitely see it in the tree form and surrounding on either side, and that's all hand crocheted. So Excavating a New Future is a subset of the New Futures series. I have a number of other works that have been completed, some of which were exhibited in December in London, and that was a great honor to get to participate in. Moving forward, I plan to continue working in the New Futures series with mixed media. So this series was all produced with acrylic on canvas, with the exception of the stitched areas here. And going forward, I'm planning on creating more work in 3D and continuing to explore and really see what else I can do with longer periods of time in a process like this. This was the first time that I've spent this much time on one series of work, and I've found it to be tremendously valuable in my personal development and the finished product. So I'm excited to keep exploring and seeing what else comes out. So nature does play an interesting role in my work. I wouldn't probably be anywhere as far along in the personal development journey that I've been on if it wasn't for the natural world and for the ways that I find the better nature within us as human beings. One of the messages in Shared Struggle is believe that we are inherently good. And so that, I think, is the core, the seed, the essence of humanity, is that we are inherently good, and sometimes we find ourselves pulled in directions that are really quite unnatural. And so I see this happening, collectively within our societies, but I also see it most of all internally as an individual human living through all of this, that I have at many times shown up in ways that I didn't want to, that felt against my better nature. And so being able to live in a place like Eugene, Springfield, and be able to spend time outside in nature, connecting to the earth year-round, has really made a tremendous difference in my quality of life and the ways that I'm able to show up and do this work, but also just to show up with other people and do the collective work of trying to find more liberation and freedom for all of us. I think that's innately what nature wants us to be, is free. So nature is a tremendous inspiration for all of the work that I do.
I'm Margaret Godfrey, an artist from Blue River, Oregon, up the McKenzie River, and I am here in the New Zone Gallery having my art shown in the Klausmeyer room. And my background is for years of teaching and always bringing art into my classroom and retiring and then becoming a full-time artist. This exhibit, I tried to break apart my art career into pieces that all went together. And this is my Aloha wall. Aloha because when I finally was able to retire, my husband had taken a job in Hawaii, and I had 2 years of learning how to use my time wisely with paints. And so I have a couple of different things going on here. There are the plein air, more realistic landscapes, and then the lava art, which is all abstract and imagined because we lived on the Big Island, and the Big Island was flowing lava into the ocean at that time. And it was so dramatic to go see that actually happening and being able to walk on the lava. And so I came up with a way of expressing that with these abstracts. And that is my Aloha wall, and those are 20 years old. We're home on the McKenzie River. I did a series about the life on the river, and much of it is fish. My husband and I are avid rafters, and I've rafted many rivers in the Pacific Northwest. And I have a lot of inspiration of the animals that you can see. And so this one is primarily somewhat abstracted of real critters that you will find on the river. And they all have a story, of course, but I won't tell you every story. Is the pen and ink with some watercolor. And that came about after our house burned down in the 2020 holiday farm fire. And we were living in rentals, and I didn't have a studio. I didn't have any place to put a big sheet of watercolor paper. And I found that I could do something in my lap. And what appealed to me was making beauty out of the burned wood. And so most of these have charred wood patterns. And as in the beginning, it was just charred wood. And then as animals started coming back, the swallows, owls, woodpeckers, every once in a while we'd be blessed to see a deer. And nowadays, because it's been 4 years, we have little foxes hopping in and a mink and other things. But these are all inspired by that time of being limited in what I could create and doing pen and ink and just adding a bit of color, and mostly red because, of course, that is symbolic of the fire. I had some space, a bigger rental that we lived in. I started painting birds, and my interest in them, I believe, was because I was dreaming myself of having wings and being able to fly off and get into the next chapter of my life, which was rebuilding our house on our old property and moving in. But at that time, I was spending a lot of time just the different birds that have appeared to me as we rafted, from the osprey to the egrets to the birds that flew into our rental house with these tanagers. And so they are in themselves another collection related to the fire. I feel so fortunate and privileged to the fact that I have been able to travel most of my life to places many people never get to. And one was South Africa. And we took one of our grandsons there a couple of years ago. And you can't come home and not want to paint a little bit of a giraffe or an elephant or a zebra. And so this is a little collection of those that have been inspired by our trip to South Africa. Mature art life, I paint in series. And when someone asks about, what inspires me to paint, there are different stories of my life, and everything that I paint has to do with that part of my story. The fish, the salmon, were painted as my daughter went through a tremendous illness, and what I learned from that is we are just like salmon. We lay our eggs, we raise our young, they eat off of us, and then they come back home. And it's just that whole process of life, and it's very similar to the human life. And so that, during that time, was what was inspiring me to paint about that, to think about, having to swim up a river. It was a very difficult time for the family. And so the swim up the river, the try to lay your egg and have it turn out okay. And that's what we worked on for a while. And that became that series. And for me, it was really about that. The birds, as I said before, were about my own desire to be able to take flight. It was not a particularly easy and comfortable time to have our home destroyed and have to rebuild and those sorts of things. Another big series that I don't have here but has been on display throughout Oregon is Educate the Girls of the World. And being a retired school teacher and having traveled enough in various places like Egypt and other places where women don't have the same kind of opportunities, I started thinking more about these young women, these children who have a hard time getting an education. And education is what allows us to move forward in life. And so that is a whole nother series. So I like to have some sort of idea and then paint it in a million different ways. Well, not a million, but a number of ways. And what's coming up, I am thinking right now, it's time to go to the journal and start thinking about that. What am I going to paint next? Sometimes when people walked into the room, they would say, the other night during the art walk, they'd say, these are all yours, but they're different. And because my life is different things happen to me, and I get inspired by something different. But for me, it's not so much that I create a style that everybody says, oh, that's a Margaret Godfrey. It's that Margaret Godfrey is painting about her life and what is in her heart at the moment. And painting brings me joy.